So today is chapter 4 of Runaway Success by Thaddeus Lawrence, and we will be taking tips from Runaway Success of Thaddeus Lawrence. As you know, he is a winner of 4 desert races, and that is an incredible kind of reputation that he has. So let us see what all he has to teach in chapter 4 today. Already we have read out 3 chapters from his book. Today is the 4th one. Chapter 4, Atacama, the Final Frontier, Preparing for Challenges, 6 through 12 March 2011. It is either easy or impossible, Spanish artist Salvador Dali once declared. March 2011 and the Atacama crossing is my final leg of the 4 desert series after Sahara, Gobi, and Antarctica. The more I learn about the location, the more I feel it will be anything but easy. The Atacama landscape is as surreal as the painter's work, and its lunar valleys have even served as a testing ground for the US National Aeronautics and Space Administration, NASA, to put its Mars rover through its paces before missions. The 15 million year old coastal desert of Atacama in South America is Earth's driest place. There are sterile stretches where rain has never been recorded, and in other parts, measurable rainfall of 1 millimeter or more may occur as frequently as once every 5 to 20 years. Much of the desert extends from the Pacific Ocean up to the Andes mountain range and can be very high in elevation, restricting oxygen flow to the lungs and causing breathing difficulties. The high altitude combined with the razor-sharp ground of its salt plains makes for a completely nightmarish traverse. Other statistics draw my attention. A big section of the race will be run on the infamous Salar de Atacama, the second largest salt flat in the world. The Oxford English Dictionary defines flat as having a level surface without raised areas or indentation. I can categorically vouch that these salt flats are anything but. These used to be the bottom of a lake, and a smattering of small lagoons still serves as a favorite habitat for colonies of elegant flamingos dancing in the shallow waters. Otherwise, millions of years of movement in the Earth's crust have remodeled the landscape to reveal a rough and ragged ground that resembles coral rock. This surface will test even the most dexterous of runners, and wretched agony awaits the hapless runner who trips and falls. Starting at above 3,000 meters in the Arcoiris Valley, the course also includes approximately 3,500 meters of ascents and descents. Scientists generally classify elevations above 2,000 meters as high altitude due to the pronounced difference in oxygen content. Athletes will experience the limitations that a combination of reduced air pressure and lower oxygen levels places upon the body. While we will be safe from life endangering acute mountain sickness, we will be high enough to experience altitude-related dizziness, lethargy, and headaches. Our hearts will work doubly hard to pump oxygen and blood around the body. We will tire quicker and feel nauseous. More recovery time is needed as the body is taxed to the limit in order to maintain oxygen and glucose levels. Dehydration, already a common danger in the desert, takes on added significance. We need to make certain that we take plenty of fluids. The icy local climate underscores the importance of hydration. A mix of mountain winds and ocean currents ensures. Just a minute. Ensures that parts of the Atacama do not see a drop of rain. This makes this parched land 50 times drier than Death Valleys in California. In the interior of the desert, rain is measured in millimeters per decade, and solar radiation is intense because of the high altitude and thin atmosphere. Due to the dangerous levels of ultraviolet radioactive rays bombarding the desert, sunblock, sunglasses, a wide-brimmed hat, and long sleeves are essential. But the biggest battle is not against the terrain of the elements. While they have a massive impact on the outcome of the races, they can be mitigated through the right mix of equipment, nutrition, and strategy. The biggest battle is waged in the mind. The fight against dreary monotony is key to success in a long distance race. At times, the vast expanse of the flat plains stretching into the horizon makes it impossible to judge distance. The color palette makes it hard to discern specific forms, and the intense sunlight and simmering heat deceives the eye into seeing things that do not exist. This goads the mind into its own forms of trickery. Win it over, and the race is pretty much in the bag. There is another cause for my nervousness. The Atacama crossing represents the end of an 18-month era of personal accomplishment. I stand on the brink of completing one of the world's greatest athletic feat, the Four Desert Series. Should I be successful, I will join an elite group of individuals who have paid our endurance racing dues in the planet's hottest, coldest, windiest, and driest deserts. In my desert swan song, I am torn between going flat out to put in my best ever showing and employing an extra prudent game plan to guarantee completion. I want to throw caution to the wind and see just how fast I can go. But in so doing, I may jeopardize all that is at stake and I risk pushing myself into over the edge. I'll be bitterly disappointed should I fail in this final challenge. Coming barely 3 months after Antarctica, my training for Atacama has been patchy at best. In between, the two events are Christmas, my birthday, New Year, Chinese New Year, and Valentine's Day. The back-to-back celebrations, feasting, and all-round decadent self-indulgence hardly help matters. I recoup my weight lost in the last desert and watch in dismay as my athletic finesse takes a tumble. With my departure date looming ever closer, the pressure is cranked up, highly strong, and with skyrocketing anxiety, I decide to boost my spirits by redirecting time and thoughts. I go on holidays. Together with my parents and girlfriend, I spent 2 weeks in Sweden's Arctic Circle. Freezing oneself in minus 35 degrees Celsius is plainly not the recommended activity to get into shape for this searing desert. But I figure the time spent with loved ones will calm my delicate nerves. I'm right. Investing in emotional connection, relationship building, and a unique experience does wonders for my soul and puts me in a strengthened mental frame to take on Atacama crossing. Upon my return, I review the challenge ahead and employ a more systematic approach to the forthcoming race. I break the factors down into what I can control and what I cannot. Starting with the salt flats, I surmise that they will be testing on the ankles and potentially rip apart my gaiters. Gaiters are garments worn over the shoe and lower leg to prevent sand and debris from getting into the shoes. In the Sahara and Gobi, I wore nylon ones that are attached to a Velcro strip glued and sewn into the bottom of my shoe. Those are now deemed too thin and flimsy, so I purchased different pair made of ripstop polyester. With a robust underfoot, leather strap, and foam ankle pads, they should withstand the harshness of the coral rock. An added complexity about altitude is the absence of specific factors such as age, gender, or physical condition that correlates with susceptibility to altitude sickness. Simply put, Some people get it and some people do not. And there is no way of predicting our vulnerability. My nutritionist advises me to help my body build new red blood cells and boost its iron stores. It will not combat the ailment per se, but will aid in delivering oxygen to cells. So, I increase my intake of red meats and indulge in more stick dinners. I also fly out to the desert town of San Pedro a week earlier in hope of acclimatizing to the dry, thin air. San Pedro is a dusty, sleepy oasis village turned tourists down. Its proximity to the country's largest salt flat, snow-capped volcanoes, steaming geysers, and otherworldly rock formations attract increasing numbers of visitors. Travel agencies proliferate among the quaint adobe streets, offering deals to throngs of tourists interested in the energetic pursuits of trekking, climbing, and sandboarding, or the more leisurely hobbies of stargazing, archaeological sightings, and lectures on pre-Columbian cultures. With a few days to kill before the other competitors start arriving, I sign up for a day trip to explore the famed salt flats and get a glimpse of the landscape that will be our playground in the coming week. As the tour guide rambles off a list of things to bring, I mentally check off the items. Water check, snacks check, hat check, sunscreen check, long sleeves and long trousers, excuse me, it is a way too hot for those. And surely the sunscreen is enough to protect us from the sun. With supreme assuredness, I announce that I am from Singapore and hence very accustomed to the heat. I'll have no need for the longs. Ah, he answers with a knowing smile. It is not for the sun. It is to protect you from the radiation. He slaps the local newspaper on the table and turns to the weather page. Look, he jabs at an index of numbers. Here are the radiation levels. I glance at the figures and listen as he explains how the figures correspond to radiation strengths. There are 5 tiers in total and they range in grade from 0, very safe, to 11, extreme. And this is the number for San Pedro, he continues. I follow the direction of his finger and exclaim, 17? That cannot be right, I protest. That is way off the charts. He nods and assures me that incredulous as it may sound, this part of the world does receive more than its fair dosage of radiation. He then leans forward and asks, so, Mr. Singapore, will you now wear your longs? With my tail between my legs, I walk out and straight into the outdoor shop to purchase a long sleeve top in preparation for my race. Fighting frustration. Competitor race briefing takes place in the open courtyard of a local hotel. There is an air of excitement as old friends catch up and reunite for another week in yet another part of the world. It is good to see some old face again and make new acquaintances. In between filling up one another with the latest news and gossip, we listen intently as race organizers brief us on the course, rules, logistics, and health matters. It does not matter how many times we have done this, every race is different. All our faces shine with anticipation, and we cannot wait to get onto the bus that would take us onto our first camp in readiness for action the next day. The atmosphere at camp that night borders on ruckus. I am sharing a tent with desert veterans, Brighton Mark Stevenson and Canadian Gary Cambridge are outstanding gentlemen who were in the same Gobi March as I. Canadian Ashkan Mokhatri and Lebanese Alain Wahabi seem to be permanent fixtures in these events, and we shared several laughs in Antarctica. American George Chamel is a banker with a heart whom I first met in the Sahara. And then there is German ultra legend Eberhard Frixe, who has done just about everything in the running world that the imagination can throw at him. Competitors are responsible for bringing an extra dinner the night before the race. This comes in the form of a fridge-dried meal for most, but profiting from our past experience, we heartily tuck into our pizzas and pasta. There is nothing like fresh, albeit cold, food to set us off on the right footing. As the temperature drops that night, I am also grateful for that extra fleece jacket that I brought along. My previous episodes of Desert Frost have taught me the value of being more than adequately prepared. Still, I do not sleep very well that night. I have never had a good night's sleep on these races, and trend looks set to continue. I toss and turn, but fail to settle into soothing rest. A case of hemorrhoid trouble adds to my discomfort. A visit to the toilet earlier in the day uncovered some bleeding. It is of some concern, but I am more annoyed than anything else. I would rather know that I have come into the race on a clean bill of health. The pain and bleeding would last throughout the entire race and be a literal pain in the butt. The first day begins brightly enough. We begin on soft ground and gradually work onto more compact surface. I am fortunate to avoid the effects of altitude, although the dry air causes a nosebleed and the radiation produces some serious tanning on the back of my hands. The open landscape across rolling hills is a tad boring, but the occasional sighting of lichen borer more than makes up for it. Most of the race will be run in the shadow of this active volcano, which last erupted in 2007. We are relatively safe as it spews only ash and smoke instead of fiery lava. It is a most amazing sight to see the shimmering heat of the desert in the foreground of this snow-peaked giant. The general consensus that first night is that the organizers have wasted no time in getting us acquainted with the savagery of this race. If we were lulled into expecting a gentle introduction to the Atacama crossing, then that erroneous assumption has been quickly put to rest. Stage 2 opens with a plunge into the Rio Grande River. This river passes between the Andean Altiplano and the Domico mountain range, and we cross its freezing cold waters repeatedly in an 8-kilometer stretch. The fast flowing waters are not technically challenging and everyone makes it without incident. The temperature changes noticeably each time we emerge from the shade of the mountains into the sun and back into the shade again. It is like walking into a completely different room. A breathtaking moment comes when we enter the narrow slot canyons. Journeying along the kilometers of brown, ankle-deep waters in between rock walls, several stories high and millions of years old, I imagine myself an Indiana Jones in search of treasure. I make it into checkpoint 1 in good time and morale. Mother Nature is not yet done parading her splendor. The next section takes us through what is arguably one of the most beautiful places on earth. But we have to work hard for it. The course lives up to its difficult rating as we ascend up to 2,700 meters along a winding sandy road. Even so, the astounding scenery that awaits us at the top is well worth the burning thighs and wanting breaths. Into the distant horizon is the snow-topped Andes range of mountains that rolls out along the spine of South America. Lying in front is a shorter but large group of brown sawtooth mountains replete with serrated sides and knife tips. Their bizarre jaggedness reinforces the illusion that they are a giant's playground of crumpled pepper and church spires. Completing the picture and adding a dash of color is a sweep of green trees and cogno grass in the foreground. The whole scene is a visual idiom, a pictorial tale that is sonorous, vivid, and breathtaking. The astounding panorama literally stops us dead in our tracks. I am later told that many of the serious frontrunners even allowed themselves the treat of pausing for a while to take in the vista and snap some photographs. Peering into the ribbons of gorges stretching toward the horizon, I reflect on how our journey is sprinkled with numerous rewards. All we need to do is to stop for a moment and look around. The time to inhale and taste the grandeur of nature's gift is now. On occasion, on occasion, I deliberate on whether to take a picture, then think better of it and move on, hoping to find a better vantage point. Sometimes the view does turn out to be better, but sometimes not, and I would have already missed the opportunity. The sandy track continues to wind its way upward, a dark section through a disused miner's tunnel, providing temporary relief from the scorching sun. A steep, bendy climb greets us as we come back out into the light. From here on, it is a long slog up and along a plateau. On our right is a barren wasteland of rock-strewn sand. The left side gives way to sheer cliff drops and steep sand slopes. I alternate between gaping at the sweeping views and keeping my eye on the distant line of runners ahead. The realization of straying, of course, does not hit with a sudden sweetness. It settles up with a soft tap on the senses and whispers, "Do you feel something is amiss?" I do. The dots of competitors in front have all but disappeared. I have been gaining on them, so am certain that they cannot have picked up speed all at once. The changing lay of the land must be keeping them out of the view momentarily, and they will surely come into sight when I get into the brow of this pass, but they do not. I swivel 360 degrees and look around in every direction. The pink markers are also nowhere in sight. There is no track to speak of, and the whole area is strewn with small rocks and pebbles. With rising panic, I run along the same direction in the hope that either a person or marker will appear in my view, but they do not. There is no use in going any further. I plonk myself down on the desert floor and take stock of my position. Using the opportunity to rest, I remove sand from my shoes, have a, have a drink of water, and nibble of food. I am not in any immediate danger. There are many daylight hours left, and I have plentiful supplies of food and fluids. I breathe deeply to gather my composure and rid myself of fear, frustration, and fury. As I peer over the lip of the sand cliff, I make out what I think are people down below. Squinting to make sense of the tiny specks, I confirm that they are indeed runners heading towards what I can just about pick out to be the tent flap of a checkpoint. Hurrah! The only problem is, how on earth did they get down there? I throw my rucksack onto my back and retrace my steps, hoping to find a suitable spot where I can safely make the descent. Fortunately, I bump into two other competitors, and together we edge our way onto the sandbank. It is a long way down and so steep that we let gravity do the work. We have a blast letting ourselves go in ankle deep sand and spawning mini avalanches all around. Back down to earth, the mood is grim at the checkpoint. A handful of competitors have pulled out of the race, including two of my tent mates. Old injuries resurfacing and new ailments materializing combined to a ruinous effect. But they are seasoned war horses and will return to the fray in another event. I link up with Australians Bradley, Bull, and Andrew Fedrigo for the second part of the day. It is brutal. We are past the worst in terms of terrain, but the vehemence of the sun is brought to bear as we wrestle with sheer tedium. As we plod along, the surrounding scrub skips and shimmers in waves of heat. This makes the unfolding horizon irreducible to tangible shapes. A cloudy white haze shrouds the blue sky, and an unrelenting sun pommels the baked earth and glinting sand. Our breath is dry, sucked out of our core. Our movement is glacially slow. It is hardly inspiring. Chirpy conversation is thin on the ground, and lively banter is conspicuous by its absence. Our gradual android pacing seems to fly in the face of conventional wisdom about hurried extreme racing. A moment of excitement transpires when a tiny spiral of dust starts up in front. It dances along for a few meters before whirling into a dust devil several stories high, lurching and thrashing like a rearing snake. It dies down and then resurfaces with swelling coils and snowballing tempo, whirling up in its vortex sand particles and small stones. It reaches a climax before collapsing into a cloud of dust. Our mood rises and falls with the dust storm. We have a go at some idle chatter, but our attempt is feeble. It is a fight to see the silver lining. All thoughts retreat into the mental dead town, reminiscent of old cowboy westerns. This is no easy ramble, and even Bradley, a hardy miner and member of an elite emergency search and rescue squad, concedes that this is definitely the hardest thing I have ever done. The only thing that is keeping us going is our collective momentum. I do not stop only because my mates are continuing on. There are an unspoken knowledge that the first one to even suggest giving up will trigger a contagion that will spread very quickly and bring everyone else down. We throw our respective weight into the ring and urge one another on with pure will and effort. The white tip of a tent peeks out from above the sun-baked earth, and the scrub abruptly parts to reveal that the rest of our encampment next to a salt lake. The sight is like an elixir of life, and that shot in the arm is exactly what we need as we charge the final couple of kilometers. Our arms are held aloft as we cross the day's finish line together. Expectedly, most of my tent mates have already arrived. Their welcoming greetings and appreciation of a shared episode is comforting. As I set about my daily ritual, I collect my allocated water and make myself a recovery drink. This is a specially formulated beverage containing carbohydrate to replenish energy stores, protein to repair muscles, and electrolytes to rehydrate. I quaff that in one go and follow up with another half liter of plain water. Once refueled, I clean myself with a baby wipes and a spot of powder shower, using a type of medicated powder for the relief of a prickly heat and heat rash aggravated by excessive perspiration. After I have changed into my other set of clothing, I examine my feet for blisters, hot spots, or cuts. Any problem or potential issue is dealt with immediately. When I am satisfied my feet are in the best possible condition, I slip on my compression socks. These are socks that come all the way up the calves to just below the knees. The calf is the furthest large muscle away from the heart, and compression accelerates blood flow back to the heart and improves circulatory efficiency. Several minutes of lying flat on the ground with upraised legs on a stool or against the tent pole facilitates recovery. And at the end of each day, I indulge in personal pampering by rinsing my racing gear. I fill a Ziploc bag with a little water and dip in my running top and ties. It is not a proper laundry, but it helps eradicate the smell and dirt of a day out in the desert. After hanging them out to dry, I set about assembling my gear and food for the next day. I continue my recovery by making myself a cup of either ginger tea to control inflammation or Japanese miso soup with seaweed and tofu. High in iodine and minerals, the latter is a tasty source of nutrition. Armed with my cup of hot beverage, I hobble to the media tent to check up on the messages sent by loved ones and supporters at home. This is the only way the outside world can make contact with us, and this soulful nourishment is an absolute must. It resets my emotional thermostat and reminds me of my purpose. The entire daily post race ritual is akin to sending a car for servicing. Minor complications can be treated before they escalate into a major problem and working parts fine tuned to improve performance. More so than our cars, we are complex machines, and like anything in life, will live longer and better if loved and well looked after. This servicing routine makes on a familiar nature and readies us for the next day. Camp quietens down soon after sunset. Dinner has been eaten, and it is time to escape from the cold and turn in for the night. If I have drunk sufficiently, I will wake up at least once in a night to relieve myself. The decision whether to get out of the cocoon of a warm sleeping bag straight into the cold darkness has been honed over the races. If it is past 4 a.m., I'll hold out till dawn. Anytime before 4 a.m. warrants a tiptoe out of the tent into the freezing night. This is not necessarily unpleasant. For in the Atacama, it means to participate in the next big thing in wilderness travel, relieving oneself under the star constellations. Every night we are fitted with a dazzling spectacle of pristine night sky, far off from the glare of industrial light and the age of air pollution. This region is a mecca for stargazers. Galaxies like the Milky Way and Andromeda contain billions of stars and are conspicuous by their spiral shapes. They are beautiful to behold and must hold multiple time dimensions of human life stories. Basking in the majesty of the domed ceiling harmonizes my soul. Standing alone in the vast universe, I accept that I am part of something much bigger, that I am insignificant yet important. Just do it. The astonishing array of browns, greens, reds, and whites surround us every day. If noticed, they break the long slopes up hills and across slabs of slate, up rolling dunes and of sands and along stony ground, down green valleys and across irrigation ditches. Sometimes we are not so much running or walking, but stubbing and stumbling. Whatever it takes to move forward. It does not matter how we get there. The objective is to just get there. It helps to build on other people's energy, especially during each morning's rapid start. Stopping even for a short while to tie an errant shoelace or adjust a wayward pack strap can drop you several positions down the order. There is a lot more catching up to do from a 2-minute halt at the beginning than a half-hour hiatus in midday when people are moving far more slowly. These tactics of keeping up with the main flow in the early phase earns me my highest ever field position of 46 out of over 120 at one point. Nevertheless, it is imperative to maintain a store of reserves at all times and to make sure that I have enough for the following day. This is especially so for stage 4, which everyone wants to get over with quickly. This is because the earlier this day is in the bag, the more time there is to prepare for the next day's dreaded long stage. We all covet an early night to sleep and awake in the best position condition. Fully hydrated, wholly fed, and sufficiently rested, but we need to be careful not to overextend and push ourselves out of contention. The line between pulling out all the stops and biting off more than we can chew is a fine and thin one. It is an exceptionally tight game, uncompromising and unforgiving. It pays to have heightened situational awareness in such times. Perhaps the events of that awful day in the gullies of the Gobi March are playing in my head, or I have yet to get over the British 30-meter near vertical scramble into camp the previous day. But stages 4 is personally, just a minute. Stage 4 is personally turning out to be a grim and arduous toil. An already difficult day becomes a precarious one. Right from the word go, nothing feels right. My worsening hemorrhoids force a longer than usual visit to the toilet, and the cumulative radiation burns blisters on the back of my exposed hands. I feel sluggish and heavy. An immediate ascent to a canyon entrance in the first section is rated as difficult. The soft bed of rolling dunes and unfurls is pleasing to the eye, but it fails to lift my gloom. At the top, I pronounce the organizers raving mad for orchestrating a route down a cascading 45-degree section into the river valley. By the time I arrive at checkpoint 1, I have slipped desperately close to being among the last on the course. It is a dangerous place to be. Apart from physical hardship, it betters the morale and threatens a long spell of loneliness. Throwing caution to the wind, I force myself into the highest gear. Somehow, I manage to catch up with a large body of competitors, and slowly but surely, I overtake them. As we come into a small forest, I am aware of a prickly pain on my right shoe. My mind drifts back to the Sahara and my shoeless boo. To prevent a minor problem from escalating into a catastrophe, I see to it immediately. I remove my shoe and empty it into the tiny shell of fragments. Less than 50 meters on, the pain returns, this time in addition to knocking the shoe on the ground. I pull out the insole and smack it vigorously against a rock. I also examine my foot and the inside of my sock, but it is still no good. The moment I get up and walk a few steps, I can feel the same barbed sensation. This is getting to be more than a mild irritant. It is time consuming and wearisome to stop, sit, take off, and put on the shoe and get back off with a heavy pack on. And the pain is a stabbing, piercing one, causing more than mere discomfort. For what I hope to be the final time, I inspect everything thoroughly. I run my hands around my foot, through my sock, along my insole, and in my shoe. And that is when I feel it, the unmistakably sharp tip of a thorn. That offending spike must be at least 4 centimeters long, having perforated the thick sole of my trail runners. I flip the shoe over only to find half a dozen other similarly evil barbs. I do not recall stepping on any thorny bush, but as I scan the earth around me, I spot tiny clusters of vegetation. These baby plants look innocuous enough, but a closer inspection reveals numerous spiky thorns protruding from each. These plants cover the entire area. We are informed at the checkpoint too that we are merely an hour ahead of cut-off time. This information causes some consternation among those present. There are still several competitors behind us, and and their race life is hanging by a thread. We still have half the stage to go, and with the next section appropriately rated as extremely difficult, we will be intimately introduced to the infamous salt flats. We have our work cut out for us. I team up with Gary Cambridge, and together we take on the salt flats of Atacama. When the efforts gets heavy, find a friend to share the burden. This proves to be a sound strategy. There is no one else as far as the eye can see. Gary is not feeling his best, but uh, summons the strength to share his life story. For my part, I am not about to leave him, and I know that focusing on getting the both of us to camp is the best way to raise my own game. I'm right. Amid the notorious terrain and the blazing sun on the one hand, the Gary's raging and my languor on the other, we make it to Camp Tebin Quinche Lagoon. The biggest lagoon is the Salar de Atacama. Strength in solidarity has won the day. Freedom to choose. I now understand why Four Deserts Club participants rate this Atacama crossing as the toughest of the entire series. That is because it is. Every day feels like the long stage, and the mind and the body take beating after beating. Askan Mukhtiari is a masochist and running his third Atacama crossing and desert, eighth desert ultra. He explains his fascination. These races reveal character. Out here, you can't hide and you can't pretend. The real you is exposed when you are beaten down. All of us, all of who we are, is laid bare, and under such stress and strain, the real person emerges. When it gets tough outside, the tough inside comes out. It is incredible how resilient the human body is. Although we are in our sleeping bags for a good 8 hours, we are asleep for far less than half that time. In between tossing about on the rocky ground and getting up to relieve ourselves, we are lucky to get a long stretch of deep sleep. Yet, we arise purposefully in the next morning, albeit bleary-eyed, severely blistered and sore to the bone. In between tossing about on the rocky ground and getting up to relieve ourselves, we are lucky to get a long stretch of deep sleep. Yet we arise purposefully in the next morning, albeit bleary-eyed, severely blistered, and sore to the bone. We devour breakfast, organize our equipment, and gear ourselves up, fully motivated to take on the next day. Then we head out into the unknown and pull off enormous distances in grueling conditions. I discussed this with fellow competitors, and we credit several factors for this exceptional level of drive, determination, and motivation. Firstly, we choose to partake of this activity. We do not accept that we should or have to do this. We recognize that this is something we want and desire. This start is important as it infers a tangible sense of freedom and confers upon us personal control. There is no getting swept away by the flow. We are the flow, and we create our own current. The frailties of human body is encapsulated in the phrase, the spirit is willing but the flesh is weak. This is false at worst and misplaced at best. It is easy to cast blame on the physical body, but it has no mind of its own. A possibly illuminating perspective is to consider whether the spirit was truly willing and filled with conviction in the first place. If so, then the mind will drive the body to do its bidding. How else do we account for the numerous cases of men and women in their 60s and 70s, ages considered well past a person's prime, blind individuals, people formerly paralyzed, and many more with different forms of physical malfunctions and ailments, completing a race frequently described as pushing the limits of human endurance? How else can we describe how day after day, when most people would be on their knees and unable to contemplate even standing, ultra racers get up to cover monstrous distances? All competitors possess a stretch goal, driven by curiosity and challenge. The stretch is then stepping out of the ordinary to take on something new and difficult with no guarantee of success. Failure is not regarded as an option but recognized as a possibility. That explains the tremendous sense of accomplishment we attain at the end of each day. It is the struggle and striving that makes eventual triumph against the odds all the sweeter. The victory and prize comes in the sense of accomplishment. Contrast the above against daily life. The overwhelming currents in the form of societal expectations, cultural norms, and conventional practice sweep so many into capitulation. This creates a no choice, cannot, and blaming way of life. The failure phobia necessitates an existence within the comfort zone. The consequential lack of growth and success makes one a de facto failure, the outcome one wanted to avoid in the first place. Either that or the game is played so safely that there is no sense of having achieved something big and wonderful. So there is no celebration, no acknowledgement, and no joy at the end. With this insight, I prepare for the long stage of the Atacama Crossing. This stage comes after the equivalent of 4 marathons over the last 4 days. We awake in the darkness of the morning and set about eating and getting everything set. The contrast between the boundless silence of the skies above and the furious activities below provides the backdrop to this arduous 73.6 kilometer stage, the peace de resistance. The universal sentiment is buzzing delight. This is the most eagerly anticipated day, not least because it will be epic and emotional. This day is designed to break an individual to see what he is truly made of. Bodies will be pounded and minds bombarded with all kinds of defeatist dialogue. Will we crumble under the deluge or will we grow in all-conquering stature? The next several hours will be our own private hell, and we will be called upon to dig deeper than ever. As Racing the Planet declares, nail the long stage and few things in life will be insurmountable. We are informed at morning briefing that there are 7 checkpoints in total, including camp. Those expecting to take more than a 2 or cover this stage are reminded to have red flashing lights on the back of their backpack at night and warned not to sleep along the course. An overnight checkpoint has been set for this purpose, 53 kilometers in. There are seconds to go before flag off. Under the warmth of the morning sun and amid the blare of music from someone's iPod, we wish one another the best. High fives, handshakes, hugs, and backslaps are exchanged. Then it begins. Once again, the organizers have not bothered with any warm up. The first 15-kilometer section is rated extremely difficult and takes us across the crusty lake and straight onto the jagged salt flats. The human convoy falls into line following the faith path carved by the frontrunners. I find myself in the congregation of the Guatemalan team, collectively known as the Hombres de Maíz. This is terrific company to be in. All three of them are seasoned athletes with strong racing pedigree. Riding on their momentum will do me no harm. The Guatemalans set a strategic but brisk pace, which is tailor-made for me. It is faster than my usual, but not too much that leaves me flushed and breathless. I am right at the edge of my comfort zone and fully immersed in a state of energized concentration. There is no room for any picture taking or daydreaming. I throw myself headlong into keeping up with them. We get in and out of the first two checkpoints efficiently. By this point, we have covered a third of the course, and I brace myself for the challenges that from experience I know will now come. The staff warned that the next couple of sections will not be easy. The sun is already at the zenith and will remain there for the next several hours. I ease off from the Guatemalans. I am still mentally lucid and count the number of times that I have been to relieve myself. Only lunatics who do such events understand the value of counting the number of times we urinate, going once in an entirety, which a handful of competitors did the day before, is a sure sign of dehydration. Our bodies are the best barometers of our actions. The normal functioning of my body is a good sign. My aim is to get to the overnight checkpoint before dusk. Once I am there, I'll evaluate my condition and options. Right now, the course takes us along a track, then cross country through undulating hills. Little by little, physiological disturbances start appearing. A piercing pain punctured the sole of my left foot, and I can feel two toenails dislodge themselves from their toes. New blisters are also forming, and this is confirmed at the next checkpoint. Three latest blisters peek out from the bottom of my toes, including a blood blister. A blood blister forms when blood vessels and tissues are damaged without breaking the skin. When the blood cannot drain through a wound, it forms a bubble beneath the skin surface. It is not recommended to break such blisters when they are too deep because of the high chance of infection. I am otherwise in good shape. These niggling problems are bothersome as they are there, and there is only so much we can do about them. So there is really no point in expending any more attention on them than is necessary. If I am going to whine about them, then I had better come up with a solution. Otherwise, I should quit engaging in self-pity. And so the battle weighs on, and the scenery continues to both astound and challenge. As we approach a gigantic 300-meter tall sand dune, we exchange notes on the most advantageous way to negotiate it. Sometimes the most direct route is not the best. Although a straight line up is the shortest distance, it will also be the most difficult and hence take the longest time. Each step directly up a steep angle is costly in terms of power and energy. The most efficient way to climb such inclines is to cut into the slope at an angle. In this way, we zigzag across the face of the hillside and meander our way up, constantly returning to our original direction. Short strides, a high chest, and head help to further conserve energy. At the top, we stumble onto an unlikely moonscape. It is a picture-perfect moment, and Japanese competitor Mayoko, Okabe and I snapped several photographs. Mayoko is another indomitable spirit, but on crutches following her Gobi existence, she later signed up for another race. Like myself, she is on her final 4 deserts race. As pain shears through her body, she pushes the distraction to the back of her mind and clicks in onto a higher gear. Her eyes and mind fixed ahead of her. She leaves me in her dust as she powers through the next checkpoint. I, on the other hand, pull up for a breather. One of the volunteers remarks how experience is brought to bear on a day like this. Those who fail to pace themselves properly in the earlier days will find themselves dropping down the results board as their bodies react adversely. On the other hand, the experienced competitors call upon their energy catch to inch up the rankings. Apparently, my omnipotent smile is an indication that I am managing the race and myself correctly. The body does not care about past performances. We are assessed every day and we either pass or fail. It is a daily renewable contract we are running on. The sun continues to ease down the horizon. I do not like this particular time of the day. Being all alone in a hostile environment with imminent twilight conjures up boyhood nightmares of lurking monsters and evil spirits. I press on, anxious to get on to the overnight checkpoint. Darkness falls by the time I arrive. As if to announce the changing phase, a sandstorm kicks up. I am dazed and exhausted. Fortunately, only a handful of competitors are there, and I am able to enjoy the full attention of a medical doctor who tends to my battered feet. She is treasure chest of knowledge and a sanctuary of compassion. She tidies me up and gives me the go-ahead. I dig into a sumptuous dinner of fridge-dried spaghetti. At times like this, the worst dinner in the world will taste sumptuous. The effect on the mind is like a tranquilizer, but I will not sleep. It is much too early for that. I calculate that if I get going now, I should arrive in camp just after midnight. American Fish, Aguilar, and I decided to pair up for this final post. We put on our jackets, gloves, and headlamps and head into the cold night. The long stage night has to be one of the most remarkable, elegant elements of this series. The long daylight hours are exhausting, but we are still relatively conscious and alert. It is the night that heralds the mental anguish. This is the tipping point, and the challenge are manifold. Our vision is limited to the range of our headlamps. It becomes almost impossible to judge distance covered. It feels like we have on our feet for a very long time, which we have, and then we are reminded that there are still 20 kilometers to go. All the body wants to do is to lie down and go to sleep, but it cannot. Night time calls for something extra. Throughout this phase, we must prove our endurance and resilience. We will be getting our money's worth in these last parts. Fidge and I re-establish our rhythm, and almost immediately I hit a roadblock. We are on a compact road flanked by minefields. The hard surface does not racket feet, absolutely no favors whatsoever. Each step sends a shock of jarring pain and explodes around the entire feet. It is absolute torture, and I reflect with irony how just days ago I bemoaned the complication of running on soft sand, only to yearn for a thick layer of them now. The road seems to stretch on forever with no seeming end. Minutes tick by and then the hours. I feel guilty for holding Fitch back with my plodding pace. I do not want to put his chances of finishing in serious jeopardy. There are no other competitors around for him to join forces with, so he has only me for company. Apart from the occasional check on each other's well-being, we are largely silent. Every cell in our body is aimed at moving us forward. It takes considerable effort to control the mind and stop it from repeatedly wondering, how long more? It is excruciating, and by the time we reach the final checkpoint before camp, I am desperate for a reprieve from my agony. This is critical juncture, the point where a weak psyche can seduce one into caving in and withdrawing. I am that close to to the brink. The soft yellow light emanating from the tent draws me in, and I long to lie down for just few minutes. Fizz is adamant that we keep going. I know he is right. It will be doubly hard to get going if we break for a rest. Our cooling muscles will seize up and any pain will magnify in ferocity. Reluctantly, I pull away from the checkpoint. My heart sinks when I discover the next 2 kilometers winds up the side of a rock mountain. I let out an involuntary cry of dismay. My legs do not feel like they belong to me anymore. Audibly groaning with each stride, I drag my feet through moderate speed. The shattering force of each step finds an outlet through strained breathing. The life-giving effects of the spaghetti has worn off a long time ago, and my attempts to resurrect my fading spirits with some grace are fruitless. Have I done all I can? Is this how it will all end? I am utterly shattered by the time we get to the plateau. And then my eyes widen with a microscopic jolt of hope. We have come to the end of the hard packed, rocky floor. What lies beneath is earth, soft earth, powder sand. If I were not still moving, I would have fallen to the ground in gratitude. Unbelievably, we are also gaining ground on a group of competitors. Distinct beams of light from their headlamps mark their trail. My animal instinct kicks in, and along with it, my second wind. No longer wandering in obscure darkness, I sight them in my imaginary crosshair and hunt them down the way a predator zeroes in on its prey. Up, down, and along dunes we traverse. The larger objectives of finishing this stage becomes more manageable with the immediate visible goal of overtaking the group in front. It deals us a psychological boost. The chemical release in the brain redirects attention to the goal and away from the feet. But soft sand is Fifth's nemesis, and it is his turn to suffer. We eventually slow down inside the dry gorge caves. There is a freakish quality to their shapes, and we glow from our lights, cast weird shadows, weird, weird shadows against their form. I ease my pace to admire this natural artwork and also to stay with Fitch. After what he has done for me earlier this evening, there is no chance I will abandon him now. The final stretch of gravel road taunts our impatience. The worst thing is to imagine that we are there only to round a bend and find out what we are not. We trudge on like fighting troopers. Finally, close to 18 gut-wrenching hours after we begin the long stage, we arrive at camp. We have done it. We have made it to the end of this ordeal and finished the hardest journey of our lives. We are totally fatigued, but our noiseless arrival belies a strong measure of elation within. A wary smile and gracious handshake says it all. The parallel race. There are at least 2 different races happening at the same time for every event. At the front of the pack is the race to be the first across the finish line. For the few involved in this contest, it is a neck-to-neck competition. Leads can change hands several times over the course, and leaders are pushed to their utmost every single day. The pace is merciless and pressure unrelenting. The smallest thing makes a huge difference, and a great thought is put into race strategy. These men and women are the creme de la creme of ultras, and their experience shows. Judicious in their gear selection and food choices, their packs are light as Luxuries are sacrificed in favor of weight efficiencies. Almost everything is organized to a precise plan. Food is selected on nutritional value and a weight to calorie ratio. They have an intimate knowledge and understanding of their bodies and are no strangers to the combative and inhibiting nature of endurance events. Some of their race times simply beggars the imagination, and it is common for them to bridge into camp around midday in the first few stages and complete the long stage in well under a day. At the other end of the spectrum are the rest of us mortals. Our race goals are simple and straightforward. Make the cutoff time and complete the race. The more ambitious ones will try not to be last. The really ambitious ones will set a time target. Many will take as much as 3 times longer than the front runners to complete each stage. As everyone is flagged off at the same time each morning, we will benefit from far less rest and recovery. We will spend more time on our feet, be more exposed to the elements, be afflicted with more blisters, carry heavier packs, require more calories, be more dehydrated, and stand a higher chance of getting heat stroke. We generally suffer a great deal more. The atmosphere at this end of the pack is cordial and supportive. It is competitive collaboration, not cutthroat competition. Tenacity, not tempo. Sturdy resilience, not speed rate, that gets us to the end. Here, competitors go well beyond the realm of physical endurance and to an incorporeal experience. For all the demons faced and overcome, participants at this end embody the soul of endurance racing, the heroic struggle of the indomitable human spirit against the odds that inspires respect, reverence, and admiration. The biggest time difference between the two groups of racers comes during the long stage. Taking into account the multitude of factors such as location, terrain, temperature, and distance, race leaders will complete the stage and arrive in camp around sundown. While they are securely tucked into their sleeping bags and sound asleep, a large contingent of competitors is still spread out along the course. Long after our initial burst of advancement and in between spurts of high spirits, we continually hit points of stagnation. At least that is what it feels like. The long empty distance gives the impression of stillness, even regression. Like the barren landscape, our being retreats into a void. This is the torment of the plateau, the long stretch of diligent effort with no seeming progress. The question is how we spend our energies during these periods. The ups and downs of life and racing span a small proportion of our existence. The rest is the plateau of a vacant horizon. We will adjust ourselves if we let ourselves be vexed and defeated by the feeling of not moving forward fast enough. We will end up abandoning our dreams and aspirations. But if we delight in the initial sweetness of success and then learn to accept and wait out, even relish the periods of plateau, then the pain, hurt, and tedium will serve their purpose. We will finish, and we will finish strong. It is these difficulties faced, the feeling that we have endured something together, that unite members of the running tribe. It is an experience that brings us closer, and we share a badge of honor that others can only jealously imagine. Those who have ever pushed beyond their physical boundaries and severed the sweet experience of going beyond the confines of ordinary existence know what it takes to find a way to keep going when the chips are down. American writer and philosopher Albert Hubbard wrote, "The world is moving so fast these days that the man who says it cannot be done is generally interrupted by someone doing it." On a personal level, this race is about dispelling the pessimist in each of us. It is about an approach of life that seeks possibilities rather than finds excuses, that asks, how, instead of proclaiming, can I? Camp 1 in the Atacama Crossing. The dreaded salt flats of the Atacama. the salt canyons. Even the front runner stopped for a picture. Just before the author lost his way. The slippery slope down. Salt pools. Only God could have made this. Brown sawtooth mountains in the shadow of the Andes mountain range. Likana Kabur kept a constant watch over proceedings. River crossing in the Atacama. Competitors spread out to ascend a monster dune. Triumph. So that was it. Chapter 4 completed. And another day, another chapter. So we'll be completing the last chapter tomorrow. But whoever is listening to this podcast, please sign up in the link given below. If not, please go to the Trust Pilot and give your views or anything in the link tree. That will help me gain more points. And thank you so much.